Hello there, Internet. Happy Pride Month. It's the end of Pride Month, and there's a lot of drama going down in the beauty community. Full disclosure, I do not follow the beauty community at all whatsoever. I've only seen a handful of videos by James Charles, and I didn't even know who Tati was until the Bye Sister video came out. And I kept hearing all of this shit about how James Charles was a horrible predator, and I thought, oh, what's this about? I'm gonna watch this video, and it's 40 minutes long. I did feel like the sexual assault allegations were kind of maybe an afterthought or a side note. There were no receipts, which she said that she had at the beginning of the video. And while I think that it's important for sexual assault victims to come forward and tell their stories, I think we need to hear from the victims. I don't want to hear these stories secondhand or thirdhand and not firsthand from the victim themselves. That doesn't make any sense. So Blair White came out and said that she heard a voice memo from somebody who had alleged that they had been molested by James Charles, but they didn't want to come forward. So she kind of came forward on their behalf, but then gave us no details because it's not her place to say who this person is or what actually happened to them. I don't think that she should have said anything at all. And I don't really blame her because it's Jeffree Star's fault for spreading around this voice memo, and he's not doing it in good faith. He's not doing it because he actually cares about justice. And I can understand how this could weigh very heavily on Blair White, but let's not forget that Blair White had her own scandal not too long ago. There were some DMs that it looked like she had called somebody the N-word and that she was being very racist. And then we see like a video where it looks credible to us until somebody debunked that. Therefore, the Instagram DMs were fake. But if somebody had just taken me aside and showed me this one-on-one, I would not have known that that was a fake video. I would not have figured that out myself. So I think that there's a possibility that the whole voice memo situation could be all fabricated by Jeffree Star, and the reason why he didn't go public with this in front of millions upon millions and millions of people is that of those millions and millions and millions of people, there's going to be some really smart super sleuths out there who could figure out if it's fake or doctored or whatever. This is a tough situation to put somebody in because James Charles can't clear his name, provide a good alibi. If you had said, I at some point have murdered somebody, but I'm not going to say who, I'm not going to say when, I'm not going to say what the motive was, I'm not going to say where, I can't disprove that. I can't account for every single minute of my life up until now and show you that I've never murdered anybody. I cannot bring forward every person on the planet that I've ever interacted with and show you that those interactions never resulted in me murdering them. I just can't do that. However, if you have details to your allegation that I murdered Jane Doe on New Year's Day at midnight at the San Francisco Public Library with a candlestick, then we have something to work with. I can give you an alibi. I can show you pictures and videos that show you that I was actually in Seattle on New Year's, so I was nowhere near the crime scene. You can check the candlestick, see that my fingerprints were not on it. Or conversely, maybe you might go through my bank statements. You might see surveillance video from one of the stores that I had visited and find out that I did in fact purchase the candlestick as well as some gloves and a shower cap so that, you know, my DNA or my fingerprints wouldn't be there at the crime scene. And so that would implicate me. But my point is, when you have an allegation with some details and with some actual information, then you can go about vetting that and seeing if that information is credible, if it makes sense. But at this point in time, what can James Charles do other than to say, no, I never molested whoever it was I supposedly molested? Like, some people think that this person should most definitely come forward. They have a responsibility because if he is a predator, then he might end up preying on other people and then it's your fault. And I don't really think that that's how it works, because I think that a lot of people, they have this idea that if a victim comes forward, people will take them seriously. It's very hard to do that after all of the drama last year, knowing that Jeffree Star is is taking advantage of the situation. It's going to be very hard to believe that other person if they did decide to come forward. But also, I've been covering the 2020 election, and there is currently a sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden. And a couple of years ago, when there was a sexual assault allegation against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, it was this huge deal. Alyssa Milano dressed up in a costume. I believe women, I believe survivors. She was very outspoken about that. And a lot of politicians who are very outspoken about Kavanaugh have very little to say about the sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden. It later came out that there was a document, there were divorce papers from 1996 where her ex-husband mentioned that there was sexual harassment that happened at Joe Biden's office, and that 3 years later she was still very upset and traumatized by this incident. So if she did make this shit up, she made this shit up over 2 decades ago. And yes, there is that question of what the fuck took her so long. She waited until it was between Biden and Trump to tell her story.
Why now? I'm not saying why not 27 years ago. I understand it can take victims years to come forward. I'm saying, why not before Super Tuesday? Why not last fall when we still had a dozen other candidates to choose from? Why wait until Biden is our only hope against Trump and then take him down?
But no, that's also not the case, because she tried to come forward. The mainstream media didn't pay attention. This was broken on independent media. And this was when the primaries were still active. It was Biden against Bernie. And the first story that broke out about this was about how Tara Reid had tried to go through Time's Up, but then they dropped her back in February. That's when there were a bunch of candidates in the race. It wasn't just Bernie versus Biden. There were a lot of different candidates that the Democrats could have gone with. And it was only after Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race and Biden became the presumptive Democratic nominee that the story came out. And then people were super mad at her for waiting so long for her to say anything.
In 1993, Joe Biden had grabbed my nuts in a corridor, and I was in Washington that year. And I had this knowledge, and revealing it could hurt the guy running against Trump. I'd save it for my memoirs. I'd like to think that I'd have a little more perspective. We have a president who says drink bleach. Geez, you waited 27 years. It couldn't hold another few months?
And it's seen as like an extreme position to demand that, no, we should definitely reopen the primary so that we can have a better choice come November for the most powerful job in the world. These are our two choices. And I think it's very extraordinary that if you're a regular person, you have to have a certain like moral standard for yourself, and other people, they hold you accountable for normal mistakes. But if you're like one of the most powerful people in an industry, one of the most powerful people in the country, you can get away with a lot of shit. And if somebody lower on the totem pole, on the hierarchy scale, whatever, they call you out, they're the ones at fault and not the person at the very top who chose to make very awful decisions. I don't know, I feel like everything's so backwards when the dogpiling happens on like people who blow the whistle. And then just kind of jumping back to the YouTube drama, a lot of videos going around of Shane Dawson being inappropriate with children. In one of those videos, he tells a girl to twerk for him, and then he says like, oh, take it off or something. Couldn't help but think of this guy, Austin Jones. He got arrested for CP 3 years ago. He was arrested for this in 2017, but somebody blew the whistle back in 2015.
I sent a whole email with all the proof. It was told to me that it wasn't completely like evil. It was just lame. Is there anything truly illegal? Like downright evil shit. That is what I need. The twerking videos were lame, but not evil. I need stuff that will put him in jail. And I replied with, he forcefully solicited videos and photos from minors as young as 12 with proof of these requests. I'm not entirely sure if I can personally provide information that can put him in jail, but I can provide you many emails of encounters with young girls that would make parents not want their kids anywhere near him.
Very powerful people have other powerful people around them. They tried to silence him. They tried to bully him. They called him the cyber bully. And then at the end of it, this dude still has his fans who are still very loyal to him no matter what.
I saw a photo today, which Not surprised because it's the world we live in, I guess. It's a girl meeting Austin Jones. She posted a photo when she met Austin and she put in the description, Austin Jones might be in jail facing child pornography charges, but he still has my heart. Hashtag I still love you, Austin.
So Shane Dawson is in a lot of trouble. The Smith family is very upset with him. There's the stuff with him and the dog. There's also the blackface and all of that. And I heard a drama channel, they were saying, oh, I'm so surprised by this. I don't know this version of Shane Dawson. I was like, I know this version of Shane Dawson. That's the only version of Shane Dawson I know of. I think that this all surfaced because of his statement on the beauty community where he kept calling everybody toxic. He said that James Charles needed to be served a slice of humble pie the size of the Empire State Building. Meanwhile, he has so many skeletons in his closet. He was older than James Charles when he did all of this problematic stuff. I heard Jacqueline Glenn said that when he did some of his racist stuff, it wasn't okay, but it was a different time period. And I'm like, maybe for you. Racial tensions are very high after the murder of George Kirby. However, I do not feel that the murder of George Kirby is particularly worse than Oscar Grant or Trayvon Martin or Tamir Rice. Remember with Tamir Rice, that kid was a 12-year-old kid who was playing with a toy gun and he lived in an open carry state. And the police that killed him weren't even indicted. It was very shocking seeing the number of all of these black people who are killed by the police. Nothing happened to the police, or if they are punished, it's so minor. Like the guy who killed Oscar Grant, I think he was out of jail maybe like a year later or something. And that was a harsh punishment for him because it actually resulted in him going to jail. This doesn't often result in the offending police officer going to jail. I don't understand why people just 5 minutes ago started to wake up, started to care when they didn't care 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Black Lives Matter. Still trying.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, so when Shane Dawson was at his most problematic, he was being terrible, he was being awful, he was also being called out in a very respectful way. Francesca's video from 7 years ago.
I hope that the people that this is directed at don't take it personally and really understand that this is coming from a place of education and not one of judgment.
Notice how she's trying very hard not to be like a triggered SJW or like the angry, loud black woman. She's not screaming, she's not crying, she's not like cussing him out.
It kind of created a shitstorm when someone on YouTube that Shanna is really good friends with, whose name I'm not going to mention, and even though I'm not going to mention this person's name, I'm pretty sure it's going to create a shitstorm anyway, because that's how this person rolls. This person uses the N-word on their channel, has done blackface, and is extremely popular and has a huge audience. He decided to get into the fray, and it got pretty ugly. And it got ugly not just because like he and I started interacting, but because his fans then jumped in and then started like threatening my life, telling me to kill myself, calling me the N-word, posting pictures with like slut and whore over my face, just a bunch of really disgusting things.
She's not being openly angry. She's appearing to be like in a very good mood. Her tone is very light. And she even starts with, you know, that big, huge slice of humble pie.
I will be the first one to admit that as a black comedian, it's really hard to not be lazy and fall back on racial stereotypes and talking about slavery. And it's really awful to admit, but I did it too a few years ago. And the reason being is I really thought, like a lot of comedians, that it made me edgy and cool and just showed how like I didn't care about being PC.
And I think that that takes a lot of humility to be able to admit that about yourself and to admit that you're very grateful that somebody came to you and educated you and that caused you to learn and grow. As Francesca tried to call Shane Dawson out, he came after her. I think he called her a whore, but then he justified that by saying, I wasn't calling you like a whore. I was like calling you an attention whore. It was never a matter of he was this horrible and it was completely normal and nobody said anything. People did say things, just didn't listen didn't care. Wanted to pop in here and add that it is June 30th as I'm filming this, and I've seen Tati's video and I have no real opinion on it because there were no receipts. She claims to have receipts, didn't provide us with any for reasons, so